We're back here on the platform, and Dr. Robert P. Murphy is our guest on the program today. And Dr. Murphy, you just said that the banks in America are in an unhealthy state, and you believe that this is going to continue. Why?
Well, there's a few reasons. So the primary one is that the reason they were in trouble in the first place is that these loans, these mortgages, people are defaulting on, and now those default rates are rising in different credit instruments like credit cards and things like that. And so I think if I'm right that the recession is going to continue to linger, I mean, those things are just going to keep getting worse. So it's not that the housing market is going to turn around and fix the problem with mortgage-backed securities. The other main problem, though, is that the dynamics in that industry have changed because now the government has been bailing them out, and so people aren't trying to make sure their bottom line is okay. Now they're trying to make sure they're in good with the people in D.C. Just to give you a quick example, AIG, the initial bailout for them in late 2008 was about $85 billion. And so people were saying at the time, we need to do this or else they'll fail and things will be awful. And then time passed, and as of right now, I think they've gotten a total of about $170 billion. So I think if people had learned back then or been told that originally it's going to take $85 billion today, and then it's going to take basically twice as much 6 months from now, I think people might have had second thoughts. And so I think it's the same thing here. And you see this also with the auto companies, that they don't get all the money up front and that fixes the problem. They get some money and then time passes, and then at that point the government doesn't want to just let them die because people would say, well, what's all the money we've injected so far? And so you get in this strange situation where once you've already pumped in $100 billion, you can't let them fail, and that just changes the incentives.
Dr. Murphy, you seem to hold the view that nothing should have been done, that market forces should have allowed to come into play. But that would have brought about great suffering. How do you feel about that aspect of it?
Well, it's not the issue of do we want suffering or don't we. Right now, we already have, in the U.S., the most severe recession since the early 80s. So it's not that all this unprecedented intervention has spared people. This is the worst economy we've seen, at least since the early 80s, and I think it's going to keep getting worse. So again, to repeat, the same wisdom people used back during the dot-com crash recession, and they said, oh, the reason we need to, George Bush cut tax rates, and the reason we need to have the Fed pump in more liquidity is to let people not suffer back then, and yet they are suffering. So it's, again, an issue of just when are you going to deal with the reality.
But in the 30s, you had people who were begging for food.
Soup kitchens.
Yes. There were long lines with soup kitchens and all the rest of it. And whole towns closed down. Cities closed. The U.S. administration, both the Bush administration and the Obama administration, they both made the judgment that this should not happen again. And to ward it off, they decided that the U.S. government should come to the rescue. But you say that, no, they should not have done that and allow the soup kitchens to take place, Dr. Murphy?
No, I agree with you up until that last point, because look at what you're saying, that the U.S. government is saying we shouldn't allow what happened in the 30s to happen again.
Yes.
But what I'm telling you is they're doing the same policies. Hoover was not a laissez-faire free market guy. He was the one in charge of the U.S. when the stock market crashed. Hoover said we cannot allow people to suffer, and so he told businesses, don't cut your wage rates. And that, I argue in my book, is the primary reason that when prices were falling, because wage rates were frozen, that made labor more and more expensive, and so that's why unemployment went up so high. So it was precisely because the Hoover administration, and then more so the Roosevelt administrations in the 30s, said we're not going to allow people to suffer, that's what caused the economy to get so bad. They didn't make the connection at the time, just like now. I'm sure the people advising the Bush administration, Obama administration, think they're helping, but my claim is that that's why this recession is lasting so long as it has already, is because of all these bailouts, that it's just freezing the economy.
The recession is lasting as long as it's lasting because of the bailouts?
The bailouts.
And one would have thought the opposite, that the recession would last even longer had it not been for the bailouts.
Right. Well, this is a complicated issue, and it gets to the heart of my disagreement with the conventional wisdom on this. is that most economists think that a recession is just because people don't spend enough money, and that's why the way you fix that is you cut interest rates or cut taxes or the government runs a deficit. But my point is that no, I mean, what happens during a recession is real things in the economy need to get changed around. That for our current recession, too many resources went into housing and the financial sector, so workers need and resources need to go from those sectors elsewhere. And if the government just comes in and cuts interest rates and bails out companies that were failing and so on, it's just freezing the economy in that unsustainable condition. And that, you know, a recession in a sense is a cleansing process that fixes the economy and gets it back onto a sound footing, and they're just not letting that happen.
Mm. But, Dr. Murphy, what about the culprits in all of this? You know, obviously you're a free market there, but there was the lacked proficiency in monitoring the whole system. Look at the Madoff situation. That's been going on for years. Not, I mean, what? Somebody was telling, I think on 60 Minutes, it was 10, 15 years it was going on. Mm-hmm. How can such abuse be carried on for so long without anybody checking, for example?
But see, the irony here is I agree with you, and I think that reinforces my point, that I'm saying it's naive to trust government regulators to come in and prevent this from happening again. Because as you say with Madoff, there were people sending letters to the SEC, like you say, for over, I think, 10 years, I think in the late 1990s, warning that Madoff was running a Ponzi scheme, and the SEC didn't investigate because Madoff and some of his family were friends with some of the regulators. And so I don't think you're ever going to get out of that. And in terms of, you know, the people who made these decisions and the culprits, right, that's why they should fail. It's, I think you gentlemen who are the ones saying that the people who made all these bad decisions need to be bailed out by Washington, not because you care about them, you care about everyone else. But that's my point, is the way you prevent this, or at least make it less likely, is let the people who made these decisions